I didn't know she was Kristen bot.
I think she's a bot, but bots need love too, you know.
He doesn't body, but you need to be bodied in the first place.
Maybe.
Don't you have to get her permission to record us?
No way. I think maybe she does. There's some forms. Betsy Johnson is here. What have I done to earn this privilege or punishment?
Wow. It's been a long time. Well, she's
she's-
gone.
She's done. One comment is too much. All right. Okay, welcome to everyone watching later on in the future on YouTube. And thank you, Anna Kraszewski, for posting this video to our heavily trafficked channel. Thank you guys for coming here. If anyone is new, I see some new people around the room, and you would like to attend, but you can't make it in person. Hello. Deanna, hello. If you'd like to attend, but you can't make it in person, please know that you can always Zoom in. The class is Monday and Wednesdays now from 1 to 2:30. Often we'll finish earlier than the allotted time. It depends how distracted we get and how much different stuff you guys want to talk about. That's basically it. I don't have anything you want to add.
Regarding the posting of videos, like say Monday's class. When do they typically have?
That's none of your business. I can answer that. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Did somebody else answer that?
I don't know. So Anna told me yesterday. I'm serious. Like Anna is all the communication stuff for real. She like does it super fast and awesome. That's totally her purview. Actually ask her. Like, no joke. I have no idea. I record them here, then she goes into the things and posts them. I know she posted the final Great War lecture. I think that's old news. I don't care. That's last year. We're 2022 all the way. This is where I love to do musical and play Old Lang Syne right now for you guys. Happy New Year, guys. Play it, everyone can sing along. We're not going to do that. Today's lectures you can see on the board for people that can't read because of the glare. And this is the debatable cost-benefit analysis of technology. I would prefer kind of an old school blackboard where you get chalk in the face and you just kind of have to press along, the chalk breaks, but you can actually read it. Lecture number 2, Civil War in the West. We're going to start with 0, a quick review. All right, John, you're not allowed to be here. Wait till you welcome. Can you please stay for the whole time? I hope you can. Questions, sir? Yes.
Last time you listed 4 things: religion, commerce, and there's a couple others.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone, Actually, you know what? Let's begin with that. I'll answer your question now. Let's kind of get started right away. It's fantastic kind of jumping off what we talked about last time. Anyone who added this class now, is with us now, has not missed a lot. Okay, you missed one class, and I'm going to recap that for you now. This gentleman over here asked an amazingly important question. He said, last class, you talked about 4 themes that in the antebellum period, before the war, the lead up to the war, from the Revolution to the American Civil War, which, again, chronology is important. The American Civil War is 1861 to 65. You listed 4 themes that give us this idea of how the North and the South break apart, become 2 distinct sections. And in fact, I know you're ready with the pencil, and I'm going to keep torturing you. I'm not going to give it to you yet. You have to wait. Before I tell you those themes, please understand, right? There's this big misnomer that the North was the U.S. and the South, they were just like crazy hillbillies who rebelled. You can think that. I'm never going to tell you in this class what to think. I swear. I'm not one of those professors. I hate those people. Like you need to get a tattoo of Abraham Lincoln. How dare you talk bad about him? Like, I don't care. I don't care where you end up on the question, what side you support, why, etc. That's your business. But it is important, and I say this as a person who grew up in Pennsylvania, grew up with all that northern propaganda, like, oh, those people are just these kind of backwards, and they're nice cousins, they're nice people, but you don't want to invite them to the family get together. They're like drunk and fall off a boat, and we don't talk about these people in polite conversation. They're the rebels, right? Please understand, from the founding of the country, America really is 2 kind of distinct sections. Here are those 4 themes and how they break apart, right? This is the 0 review, first thing on the board. First one was religion, all right? Becca Schmidt, you are ready to write as well. Excellent. It's a million points to you. The first one is religion, right? We said it's that traditional story of Massachusetts Bay Colony, the Pilgrims, right? Famous 1620 Mayflower cartoon. They actually were a cartoon. It's weird. Like this is a weird, never mind, this is for a different time, but they weren't actual people. We'll talk about this conspiracy some other time. They come over from England. They want to avoid what they see as religious persecution, right? They're like, ever since Henry VIII, Elizabeth, they don't like us as well. The Anglicans don't like Catholics. They don't like the Puritans as well. They come to Massachusetts and they form this tight-knit religious community, right? That is not the story of the South. In the South, you have largely Anglicans, people that hate the Puritans. I mean, you can even stop there. That's already great. Like, get the boxing gloves out, okay? The Anglicans who run England, the Puritans hate them and are afraid of them and go to America to avoid them. They also come over to Virginia. So right away, in this classic South in Virginia, Anglican Tidewater area, you already have a juxtaposition and some tension between those two sections. However, I quickly said, right, what happens in both these things kind of fall apart. Both Massachusetts Bay Colony, the tight-knit Pilgrim community, and Chesapeake Anglicanism both fall apart in what way? Remember this from last class. Let's start with one. How do the people of Massachusetts fall away? Okay, sure, right? Jonathan Edwards, right? The kind of fire and brimstone preaching. Okay, but that's still some, that's excellent. That's still some kind of like, there's some good Puritanism there. There's some good like religious belief, right? They lose their faith and they fall into these social justice movements, for lack of a better word, right? Abolition, temperance, women's suffrage, women's voting, Seneca Falls, 1848. A lot of these things come out of New England because people there saved for, and they're maybe not even aware of this, kind of subconsciously. But we don't have religious faith anymore, but we still have this reforming zeal. And opponents will say about New England, oh, so you don't believe in God, but you still want to control people, you want to tell people how to live their life. This is definitely a stereotype about Northerners. I say this as a Northerner, right? People in the North want to like put you around and move you and tell you, try to do this is like it. When you that's cool. Why are you smiling? This is your aunt just came here to think this is funny, like, right? There's this kind of like loose society around, whatever. People in the South, it's much more vulgar. They're just like, we want to make money. The people in Tidewater Anglican they like made rap videos. They just like burn money because it's funny. Like, you know, we have tobacco's gold. All we care about is money. I know can't serve God and mammon. We're going all in on mammon. So right away, this first thing you asked about religion, right? Even that kind of fractures. And then you have what I started the class with, actually last class. You have the deep Catholic influence in Florida and the Mississippi River Valley, DeSoto, Coronado, St. Augustine, Florida, going back to Christopher Columbus in 1492, just the whole Western Hemisphere. So you really have this kind of tripartite Catholicism, Puritanism, Anglicanism, Puritanism breaking into social justice movements, Anglicanism, let's just go all in on tobacco. Okay, everyone understand that, right? Also in commerce was the second thing. Religion was one, commerce was two. I said that New England Communitarianism, not that it's communistic, but it's communal, right? That will be exceptional compared even to Northern industry and the Industrial Revolution, the idea of like, well, I'll get to this in a second, but that idea of these big cities, right? Think about right at the eve of the war with the Irish potato famine. A lot of Irish people are coming over. Where are they settling? New York, Boston, these big urban centers. That's why you have a lot of these ethnic tensions in these cities. The North is very, very much what we call today progressive, not just in these social justice issues of the de-Christianized Puritans, but in the idea of like technologies, pushing society forward through business, that kind of thing. Whereas I said, I suggested a book for all of you to read, Thomas Haddock's Fears and Fascinations. He argues that for Southerners, their ideal century was probably the 1300s, 1200s. They wanted a kind of medieval feudal society. That's now sadly, right? The prevalence of slavery in the South, the slaves would be exchanged for the serfs of Middle Age Europe, or white indentured servants in the South as well. If you want a really good book on this, Edmund Morgan wrote a book, I forget the name. Reese Isaac, I think, is Transformation of Virginia. Edmund Morgan is American Freedom, American Slavery. He talks about that in the South, whether it's slaves, indentured servants, this kind of feudal society, right? Massive landlords. All right, so on commerce, you already have a kind of difference between a feudal, almost distributed society in the South versus industrialized capitals in the North. Third theme, sir, again, fantastic question, best question in the class so far to you. Greco-Roman philosophy, we said in a very kind of like simplistic looking way, the North, all roads lead to Rome, high centralization. Washington should control everything, erase state lines. There's even people that talk about in the 60s and 70s that there are some people who are so centralized, they actually wish we could erase state boundaries in the US. What is the county, how does Latah County relate to Kootenai County? Do they border each other? I have no clue, because who cares, right? Like the county lines don't matter. No one's like, oh, well, you know, I'm in Ada County, which is Boise, and Boise County actually is Horseshoe Bend, which is embarrassing, we'll admit. And no one's like, oh, if I could just get across the county line to Horseshoe Bend, I can do X. No, right? It's all Idaho. It doesn't matter. There are some people in our society today that are so centralized, that want so much top-down rule from the federal government. They would like to, in a sense, do away with state lines and have them be the way we look at county lines now. They're irrelevant. We're just one United States. That is very, very much different from the Greek philosophy in the South, this kind of confederation, Delian League-like type thing. I like the last class talked about the Peloponnesian Wars a little bit. It's always good to bring Thucydides into the class. Thank you for that.
It was Ryan, actually, but thank you for that.
Well, I was appreciative to all parties involved in bringing him into the classroom. It's that classic and traditional, right? The North is the US. We're all in it together. We're states' rights in the South. All of you have heard that. That's the third thing. Fourth issue was enlightened liberal republicanism, which both sides claim. I think it was you who talked about, in a very brilliant way, you talked about how both sides were arguing, oh, I'm the successor to George Washington. Washington, of course, would have wanted us to become as centralized as possible. He's the first president. Washington, of course, is a Virginian. We support the Confederacy totally. And look at what the Confederates want to do against Lincoln as we did against George III. Both sides claim that. So, sir, in recap, your four themes: religion, commerce, Greco-Roman philosophy, enlightened liberal republicanism. Okay. And people who came late, I mean, who weren't here last class, shame on you, by the way. Those of you who are joining us right now, you're all caught up. You're all good to go. And I'm happy you're here. Most of you, I'm happy you're here. All right, so number one, the Texas question. Let's go. Today's class, I mean, I really am I'm a big fan of G.K. Chesterton in general. I think most of you are. This is so dumb saying this. Sorry?
St. Chesterton?
Exactly. Right. Tell me how you really feel about it. Yeah, St.
Belloc? St. Hilaire Belloc?
Belloc, yeah, Belloc's awesome as well. I like Belloc a lot as well. Servile State, trending on Twitter. Chesterton says he's like, the best compliment you can receive if you're an author or whatever is something was too short. I read John's book and it was 6,000 pages long. It felt like 6. It read so beautifully. Of course, with him, it would be the opposite. If he sent me something that's 2 pages long, I'd be like, I can't get through a sentence. But I mean, the other would be ideal, would be better, is what I'm trying to say. In this class, if we can get through things, in a fast manner, in an efficient manner, all the better. The class technically goes to 2:30, but if we can get out earlier, why not? That's what I'm saying. So today we just have these 4 themes: Texas question, Mexican-American War, the Mormons, and the Salt Lake Settlement. I don't have something on there called the State of Deseret, but it's so boss. I can't wait to talk about that. So you can mentally attach that to number 3, the State of Deseret. I'm gonna ask you all now. Okay, the last part, really, more manifest destiny, connects to the review stuff we talked about yesterday, and the Mexican-American War. And that before I ask you about the State of Deseret, that first 4 theme question was the first part. The second thing that you missed yesterday was simply we talked about manifest destiny and the idea that once the Americans break free of the colonial yoke, once they gained independence in 1776, really beginning with the presidency of Thomas Jefferson in 1800, his Louisiana Purchase, doubling the size of the US, kicks off this great move westward that will end. I think it was Brian, you again yesterday talking about Wyoming and kind of Western settlement, will end with Frederick Jackson Turner in 1893, a historian 90 years later saying, now we've stitched up the frontier. What's next? And the answer is the next world. That's what's next. But that's beyond the scope of this class. These are the 4 things we're going to talk about today: 1830 to 1850, because the next class gets us to 1860. 1850s are incredibly hot, and then hot in a very violent. You look at the bleeding Kansas, especially. Maybe that's when the war really begins. Actually, maybe the story changes wisely. leaving Kansas is when everything really kicks off. But that's next class. This is this class. Who knows anything about state of Desert? Wow, blow me away. It's Utah, okay.
Actually part of Mexico.
You're on the right track,
It was
okay?
actually part of Mexico. They wanted to leave the, US out and then they decided to do a state with all the state. And pop over.
But not until 1890. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else know? That's exactly correct. The state of Deseret comprises proposal 1/6 of the contiguous. People in Washington were pretty pissed. They were like, I'll explain why, but like, oh, you guys want to have your like democratic state. And it's going to be how big? People like, oh, as big as Colfax. I mean, as big as California. Bigger than that. And the government was like, okay. We're like, we're all totally on board. No. So we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, state of Deseret is super, super. In fact, yes, Dave.
I'm concerned with that.
That's it. I think I'm protected. Yeah, that might, thank you. That might hurt a little bit. Especially if it's fell in my head too. I end up on fail. So I wonder how many people on fail army like want to be on that. Like, what a moron. Like some guys who really it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna fall in this pit and report me. And it's like it's not real. You know, like I'm gonna park in front of the house, in front of the garage, and not press the button and drive the car through the door and record it. And it'd be hilarious if your wife was like, oh, I'm recording, and she doesn't. And it's like, I just really know for nothing. No place for it. All right, Texas question. Who are the impresarios? Who are these people? You know, what is Texas in the 1820s? John, let's go. College Station. When I think of you, okay, this guy, if you don't know this guy, by the way, this guy's the man. He's the coolest dude of all time. Texas A&M grad. I think about Johnny Manziel, Texas A&M alum, right? Exactly. And he did that, right? He always did. And I think about him. I'm going to you because the connection here is I'm looking for a money answer from you. Manziel, after he won the Heisman Trophy his freshman year, was filmed in a videotape in Las Vegas, you know? He did like a skit where he had a wad of $100 bills up to his ear, and he was telling people, I can't hear you, there's money in my ear. I'm so rich. And so this is why I want to ask you, considering your connection to Texas A&M and the Texas question, what is going on this time? Do you know, and you don't have to, anyone can chime in. What is going on in Texas in 1820?
I'll chime in a bit my ancestry, my family actually. So
Okay.
I think in northeast Texas, so north of Houston, east of Dallas is wooded, it's more temperate.
As long as it's nowhere near Emerald, it's fine.
But my family ended up settling.
That's a problem.
But yes, so a lot of people who are frontiersmen in Tennessee and Kentucky, especially people from Virginia, their parents or grandparents have already moved west. They really weren't satisfied with being that far west, I guess. So they moved further west and settled a lot in northeast Texas and in central Texas. And you have this interesting. And then they start to butt up against the rancheros and the Mexicans already there. But it's very sporadically populated. Texas, and it's Mexican, and I don't know. I get like my depth of my knowledge isn't super great, but that's kind of like frontiersmen like David Crockett. David Crockett goes to the Alamo, fights in the Alamo. These are the sort of people you want to have in mind for who's going and settling in Texas, and they're not like the people who are getting in their covered wagons and are heading west on the Great Plains. Like they're going and settling like towns and pockets and things in a more temperate, more wooded area compared to open farmland. And then they're going to end up doing a lot of cattle ranching and eventually oil, but at first it's cattle ranching and land plantations. And that's one of the controversies with Mexico is that all these people from the south, probably few of them want to say want to go in slavery. Mexico says absolutely not. No, we're not doing that, so it's bad. So that's one of the reasons that Texas always responds, because they're not bringing this especially in Galveston, Texas. Wow. Tourist. You live in Houston and you go out for the weekend, you go out in Galveston. Coastal town, it's on the Gulf of Mexico. But at one point in time, I think it was there was a slave port among other things. So
They wouldn't have been important until they had the,
no, they would have been building them in conflict involved. So
Yeah, Walter Johnson, a historian, wrote this book called Soul by Soul about the New Orleans slave market. The religious movement of New Orleans and slave trade. Good answer. Okay, good. No, that's a great answer. Why there's a price in the very good.
And by the time of the French Revolution, Americans outnumbered vastly.
6-1. Yeah. Impresarios are, these terms, white, black, etc. These terms are like categories of the mind. I much prefer like Anglo-Saxon Protestant means something, Catholic means something, Mexican citizen, but basically, like our cultural terms today, impresarios are white Protestant guys, WASPs, different nationalities or whatever, but just like Americans, so to speak. And at this point, Texas is Tejas y Coahuila. It's part of actually, we'll talk about this in a second. Remind me about state flag theme park. And I mentioned this against my bed. I hate theme parks. I don't understand people like war coasters. Yeah, what a waste. It's a disaster. It's an embarrassment. But I have to mention this. I have to mention this for the part of Texas. Someone remind me, John, you're my Texas guy all the way, brother. If I forget this, remind me. I'm gonna tell you all why Texans deserve to be super cocky. I'm not joking at all. They deserve it 100% more than anyone else. Not just because they have their own electrical grid, which is really cool in its own way. But okay, the empresarios, as Hunter correctly said, they're outnumbering the Mexican citizens 6-1. And there is some religious angst here too, because the empresario guys by and large are Protestants, and then the Mexicans are Catholics. Texas, what becomes Texas, is going through a huge influx. Let me address it now. Here's why. The reason there's Six Flags theme park, Texas is under Six Flags in the course of like 3 decades. The first part of the Spanish Empire, when Augustine Iturbide, Mexican independence in 1821-22, they become part of Mexico, all right? And then they become their own state, right? Then they go to the USA at 4, and then the Confederacy, and then back to themselves, back to the US. Like, there's so much. Texas really is this amazing microcosm for America. I've explained so many times to people in different classes, Texas is the Russia of America, right? Like, and I mean that I really, really respect and like, even love Texas. Like, where are the most American Americans? In Texas. Like, what would you do if you were taking the Trans-Siberian Railway in Russia? You'd be terrified, enthralled, overjoyed, and you also think maybe the Russian guys are aliens, right? Like, oh, there's a guy, it's -25, he's walking in boxer briefs in the ice water. And it's normal, he's Russian, like that's the only explanation you need, he's Russian. Well, he eats oil, like, okay. Texas has this kind of like crazy individualism, it's very unique character. And the reason I say arrogance, I'm jumping ahead of the story now, but it's like Texans talk, well, everything's bigger in Texas, the Lone Star State. Texas is the only state in the Union of any legitimacy that is its own country. Between 1836 and 1845, Texas is the wonderful Texas, as independent as Sweden, as Belgium, more so. We're talking about the character of Swedes and Belgians, even more independent. Independence is in their mind as well. California doesn't count. California, for like freaking 9 months, we put a bear on our flag. And then we get our goal. And like California is such a joke, even from the start.
Excuse me, California, I'll be here.
Tell me, convince me. Tell me differently.
What are you doing here then?
I am so happy to have, I'm so happy to have some real Californians in the room. I'm ready to be seen. I've had a whole life, this like deep, like, read more wrong about California. Tell me why it's the best. I'm all ready to be convinced. Why? Why in California more so than anywhere else?
That's so than Wisconsin.
But yeah.
That's fair enough. The fact that you guys are from California makes me like California more. That's a very positive thing.
I mean, when I arrived here, wow.
I know, I will agree, and see, I'm contributing to this. I'm so sorry, because you guys, I've known you guys for like 2 weeks, you're like the sweetest, nicest people. If you guys are representative of all Californians, California is my favorite state. People,
I don't know, we're up here.
well, you didn't leave.
California is that?
That's fair, you didn't leave, right, are you still Californians?
Yeah.
No, go ahead, that's right, I can't argue that, it's very fair.
We have it here, so thank you.
Well, we're happy to have you. And people in Boise though are the worst. I'm not gonna lie, like, really, like, you're from Boise, like, you're from Boise. Sorry. Really, like, oh, Boise, we're so important. We have 2 million people. Oh, wait, it's 200,000. Oh, war. Okay, and who's been on Warm Springs Avenue in Boise? Who's been there? All right. Okay, do you know that guy there has a house with like a castle that's for like $3 million? Like, who does that guy think he is? I want to knock on his door and be like, who are you? You don't, this doesn't work. You don't deserve whatever this is. Like, this looks so tacky and dumb, and it symbolizes all Boise. So I would choose California over
We
Boise.
have a castle in Moscow.
Where? What's the
It's
big
on the
combination?
east end of town.
Oh, what is it? I never. No.
Dr. Rich, is he still there? Dr. Rich built it. And
He
it is a pass.
He named himself after his financial status.
No.
Dr.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Dr. Money.
Doctor, you're okay.
Yeah.
So you said religious for Protestants. Are we talking about the Bible Belt Protestants that you talked about last time that cropped up? Or are we talking about Puritan Protestants?
A great mix of people. It's really in terms of like, of course, well, Brian talked about some of his ancestors and people from like Appalachian stuff. A lot of those people are going to be coming from the Bible Belt and kind of migrating geographically from close by. But this is actually really what I love so much about America and being American is that it really is a melting pot. I appreciate it. It's all types of people. But by and large, again, Hunter had the operative finger. In the 1830s, it was 6 to 1 for every one person who's a citizen of Mexico, whatever that means, because Mexico is 8 years old. Really kind of the Spanish Empire, just going back 300 years to Cortez and all that. There's these, these people 6 to 1 that are Americans coming in who are largely just WASP is the best way I can describe them. Is that
So
Anglicans, Puritans, atheists, white guys, just a bunch of like, yeah, a bunch of just kind of American. There's cultural tension as much as there I would say is religious tension. Always.
So, don't forget, articulated in the last one, the Revolutionary Fathers were more British than the Brits, is what I was trying to say.
Sure.
So, if you brought up Texans or Americans, I can go there, because the Old World Britannia is Britain, the words are Britons never ever shall be slaves, even to the British.
Right.
So the Revolutionary Fathers
It's awesome.
are the most British of the Brits. I mean, George Washington was sitting in Texas fighting against his own war to Britain, right? So,
Yeah.
so these are people who are very loyal to Britain, who are British in their mindset.
Right.
So we come to Americans, I think when we get to Texas.
Well, I'm sorry.
This is my theory on it.
That's a very great theory. I'm sorry to suggest so many books. Maybe it's an overload. If that's the case, just go on and say. But there's a historian named Anne Smart Martin, excellent middle name, who she wrote a book called Buying into the World of Goods. And Anne Smart Martin argues that exactly as you said, colonists living in the British colonies, 13 colonies at the eve of the Revolution, were the most prolific people when it came to buying all types of British tea, furniture, whatever it was, and they wanted to out-British the British in a certain sense. Late, some people in fashion in the early post-war period wanted to out-Paris Paris. Paris is the fashion capital. Our women in New York will look more Parisian than women in Paris, that kind of thing. The ultimate, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? So you're right. Okay, that's a very, very fair point. Okay.
And not just imitation, like they actually were Brits.
Right, and indeed we're subjects under the
Trying to be Brits. Right.
Right, so I'm just wondering if when we hit Texas, has this American mindset, is that when we really become American?
I don't know.
It's kind of a.
I promise you, there's so many times in this class where I will just present facts to you. You have to tell me, like, you're gonna have to put it together and make an argument. And
what I like so much about history, the way science is supposed to be, is that it's always open to correctives and revision and stuff. I don't know. I mean, like you tell, like there are open questions. I've told you multiple times. The Civil War is 61 to 65, and it is. That's Fort Sumner to Appomattox. That's set in stone. You can make different arguments about when it really begins. Does Reconstruction count? So I mean, you'll have to tell me. I'm not going to grade your assignments in this class. I mean, there is no actual grade, but for like there are assignments. They're intrinsic. They're intrinsic. You can do them for the fun of doing it. If you like self-punishment. I want to do an assignment that I have to finish a deadline, get stressed out, and not get rewarded for it. So if that's you, I encourage you to do it. But in these kind of papers and stuff, I'll be able to see kind of where your arguments were and whatever, right? And then that's a great theory or a bad theory. The theory you just laid out now, very reasonable. Is it correct? We'll see. Okay, well, what happens though? Let's get done with Texas. Too much Texas for me already at this point. Texans have a revolution, 1835. Okay, and Santa Anna. This again, this is an iceberg thing. All right, if you really want to get into this deeply, please do. What does Santa Anna do in response to this revolution? He comes into what is Texas, and what famous event happens? The Alamo, right? In 1836, he kills everyone in the Alamo, right? There's this great last stand. People that have been to the Alamo often will say, you know, modern day San Antonio, like, I can't believe how small it is, right? It's so tiny. How ironic for Texas. That's maybe this is a microcosm for everything in Texas. They say it's so big, the Alamo is so tiny, they're exaggerating everything. Santa Anna comes and he kills everyone at the Alamo, and the Americans use this. This is like not the original. Someone go full Thucydides. What is this like? Maybe this is the original. This will be like what in Greek history?
You're not talking about Thucydides, Herodotus?
Like give me Herodotus, right? Thank you. Yeah, exactly. It's Thermopylae, right? These, you know, Leonidas and the Spartans, they lose to the Persians. They all die. But after this amazing, you know, heroic stand, and they will, by that selfless sacrifice, encourage all of Greece basically to get behind and expel them, and they do, right? The Greco-Persian War is 499 to 449 BC, half a century, but the Greeks win, kick the Persians out. This is a similar, on a much more smaller scale, the Americans will rally around, you know, don't forget the Alamo, and a general, very famous Texan named Dan Houston, he rallies the Americans, engages Santa Anna at San Jacinto, and basically forces him kind of against a tree with the barrel of a gun to allow Texas and Colonial to be independent. Okay, Texas independence is born in the wake of the Alamo. It's almost like, I swear I don't see any religious significance in this, God rest their soul. But in the Bible, when it says like, you know, unless a seed dies, it can't be born, literally all those dudes dying at the Alamo burns the Republic of Texas immediately, basically. When they're dead, they're gone, but the response to that and the 6-to-1 advantage makes Texas independent to 1836. Okay. I said last class, in this class, you'll always learn at least one good thing. This is the second thing. First one is to hate people from Boise. This is the second thing you'll learn, that Texas is independent.
Point 3.
I really love Boise. I'm totally joking. As a general rule, like, no, I honestly think on a kind of stupid aside, if I make fun of something, I probably really like it, because otherwise I would make fun of it for me. And I hope I'm not a mean person. It's actually sincere. Like if I really hated Boise, like if I haven't mentioned a city at all in this class, like if you're like, he hasn't talked about San Jose, maybe I don't like it, you know, actually, right? Or if someone mentions Oakland, I change the subject, maybe like, but I do like Boise a lot. I really like Boise a lot. Very much so. But they are terrible people, truly, at the same time. That's actually sincere. Talk about ultimate nouveau riche. New York, not even close. So 1836 to 45, Texas is independent. Okay. But my friends, this will set the direct stage for the Mexican-American War, because the Americans do not like that Texas is independent, right? We don't like that. If you haven't noticed this yet, in U.S. history, and by that I mean kind of, let's take the top-down approach for a second. Let's say you're a Jeffersonian, you believe in states' rights, and Idahoans often very much do. I don't want to hear even from Washington or Oregon. I want Idaho to give out Idaho, that's fair. But imagine, let's just take the optic of someone from New England, someone from the North, who's like, you know, we're you know, one for all for one, strong central government. We do not like the idea of, even if the people in Washington say it's good that our guys, the American guys, it's good that they beat the Mexicans.
That's good. Because that Spanish Empire has been there for 300 years. They're different than us, blah, blah, blah. Our people beat their people. Imagine that simple dichotomy. We don't like now that, oh, but they're independent for 9 years now. And they're going to maybe grow into a rival to us. We cannot have that. We're not going to be able to write the song from sea to shining sea if Texas is independent. The song has to be written. It can't be from sea to shining sea, parentheses, except for Texas. It doesn't even sound good if you try to sing that. It's so awkward. You have to incorporate them. So I'm not going to give you the long story. It's either that there were people in Mexico, Mexicans, at this point by 1846, Mexico is standing on its feet for 20 some years, 24 years. Remember, Mexican independence happens in 1822 out of the crumbling Spanish Empire. And this is a larger phenomenon. Who's the main guy in world history who's like super big on Latin American independence? Agustin Iturbide is the guy in Mexico. But who's the dude? Bolivar.
It's all because Napoleon takes over the Spanish home, right?
Sure, and in fact,
Napoleon doesn't want to.
sure, in fact, that's a brilliant point because nothing happens in a vacuum. If you remember last class, we talked about the French Indian War in America and the disputes over Francophone Canada and all that stuff that leads to the revolution. You think here on that point, Louisiana Purchase in 1803, why did the French allow us to double our country for pennies on the dollar, a la Alaska Purchase, which is 18 cents an acre? Why did the French just give up all this land? Well, they're fighting the British. Napoleon wants to take over all of Europe, right? The zeitgeist, Hegel, the famous German philosopher, talked about Napoleon arriving in some German town, the zeitgeist arriving on horseback. As every philosopher, like, wow, dude, can you say Napoleon showed up in town? Like, you have to like translate his words like by 9 footnotes, like, yeah, I'm not gonna talk. Like, we were having a nice conversation with this guy, and he used like 5 terms. It was like, you're so pretentious, I can't talk to you longer. The same thing happens in the Spanish campaign, which is very brutal against the Spanish people. Napoleon, France, etc., all of Europe, and Spain, which has enough problems with crumbling American enterprise, way overextended. They have not been able to find El Dorado for 1 billion years now. That was the Spanish model, right? I don't want to get, I'm going to go off on too many rabbit holes, but this is actually a historical one. It's not a dumb one. For lack of a better word, there were 3 main colonial models in America. The British were like, they're the pilgrims, the settlers, right? We're going to come plant corn, do little settlements, right? Like village, movies like that, where creepy clothes, and settle stuff, right? The French, who are the best, I'm a huge Francophile, as you probably know. I think some of you know that. French were the best. They were like, we're actually going to talk to the Native Americans and trade with them. We're going to have a fur trade. They established a massive kind of like quid pro quo network on the Mississippi River Valley, and everyone gets rich, and it's great. The Spanish are like, oh, Pizarro and Cortez took a bunch of money from people. Like Pizarro put Atahualpa in a room and like fill it to the top with gold. That's our model. We're just going to look for gold from now, right? And in a certain sense, that get rich quick scheme worked for Cortez and Pizarro, bites the Spanish in the butt, because instead of like settling up this, the closest the Spanish get to like good settlement is like Inaugurated in California, right? Evangelization. The whole coast of California is named after saints because of Inaugurated. He has a good model. But Spain in general, the crumbling empire, the second empire, just find people and take their gold. And you guys know me, I'm not some like woke, historian who's like, oh, these guys are all so bad, and how dare they? I'm just saying, like, that's what the Spanish, that was their, I'm not making a moral judgment. And it was terrible, he did it, and it was great, whatever you think about it, just like it was lazy. And the Spanish now are having enough problems with these movements, and Bolivar is the guy, Gran Colombia, and the kind of total disillusion of all of Latin America. This is where Mexico is now, but in positive sense, out of the embers, smoldering embers of Spanish Empire, they've been independent for 40 years. The Americans go, there's this dispute over our border, the Rio Grande and the Luchas River, the Nut River. What is the border between the Republic of Texas and Mexico? That's what they're talking about. And depending upon your version of the story, first of all, tell me what happens. I've been talking way too long. I'm getting annoyed with the sound of my own voice. What else? What happened? Does anyone know? Yeah, or the Rio Luchas, the Nut River. It depends. I actually don't know, honestly, which one is more north, but they're almost like parallel.
The border ends up being really different.
It does,
I
exactly.
think the word new chess is.
In Texas today, or
I think so, but I might be wrong.
I
This is my vague understanding of it. It's a Santa Anna comes back. I think he's like Napoleon, except I think he comes back 4 or 5 times. I don't know. It seems like he comes back a lot, and he decides, okay, that whole Texas thing is rather embarrassing, so let's try it again.
it didn't work the first time.
And then I believe he invades Texas. This time, the Mexican ranchers who were there are much more on the side of, hey, we like this whole Republic Texas thing that's going on. And I think they will like that a little bit, but they're definitely on board by this point. So they're not exactly very thrilled about Santa Anna showing up. And the Republic of Texas is kind of getting its butt kicked because Santa Anna had time to build up more troops and supplies and resources. And then the Republic of Texas, I think Sam Houston and Austin go to Washington and say, okay, we need help. That's very, that's the rough. I think that's my rough story.
Regardless, and some people too also claim that U.S. stages a false flag attack. What is a false flag attack? It's a simple enough. What does this mean?
What happened on January 6th?
Okay. First controversial comment of the day. Okay. I love this class can be as controversial as you guys want. Okay.
A false.
Some people will argue that. Okay. Some people will not.
A false flag attack is something that's staged by one group of people and then pinned on other people. It's basically like.
Or imagine, okay, yes, okay, let's say Idaho's fighting a war against Washington, right? We in Idaho want Washington to attack us. We want the people in the public opinion to say that Washington, they're bad guys. They're the aggressors, right? Washington doesn't want to attack us, right? So me and Dave Schmidt, who run Idaho, and we dress up as Washingtonians. And we go across the border and attack ourselves. And then John films it. And he's like, look at these Washington barbarians attacking Idaho.
Both of them.
That's, yeah, but all 2 of them.
I can lend you my code if you want.
All 2 of them. That's a false flag. But then we pretend obviously that like, oh no, Washington attacked us. That's the casus belli. That's the justification for war, right? We've been attacked. We're defending ourselves. So either they won't help, either there's real problems, or just straight America just like, we just can't tolerate anymore. We want Texas. We're lusting after Texas. We want to become their liberators, right? We're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We can beat Mexico again, but also come to save the damsel in distress Texas and incorporate them out. It's perfect. This battle is a stunning success for the Americans. Combat operations last only 18 months. 1846 to 47, the Americans have eventually captured Veracruz, the Gulf, and it's just one victory after another. What is important for the Civil War, I'll talk about there's 4 results of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which is the treaty that ends the Mexican-American War. But what is important for the Civil War, guys, ladies and gentlemen, people, here's the info, is that it is a training ground for the Civil War brain trust of people. For instance, one of the most famous personalities of the Civil War, Robert E. Lee, the famous / infamous Confederate general. He's a hero in the Civil War. He, working for Winfield Scott, I think he's a colonel at this time. He does kind of like crazy, little James Bond like stuff in Cerro Gordo through like volcanic fields, sleuthing operations. Him and everyone else who didn't do that. It was kind of the attitude. All these guys who were at West Point, the U.S. military academy, they commissioned together. When the Civil War breaks out 13 years later, it's brother against brother, because not only were they roommates at West Point, they fought together in the Mexican-American War. They practiced tactics in the Mexican-American War. In fact, if you want a really cool story that illustrates this great, think of Clay, his sons, 4 fought for the South, 3 for the North, even families, brother against brother, literally. The coolest story I ever thought was, this guy, Anderson, he's an artillery instructor at West Point. His best student is this guy named Pierre Gustave Toussaint, pretentious Frenchman in Beauregard. And Beauregard is so good at artillery there at West Point. Anderson's like, I want you to be my TA. I want you to grade papers for me. And I'll treat you like garbage, because I was too, sorry. So he has Beauregard, his student, be his TA, they work together. When the war breaks out, Beauregard takes the information he learned from Anderson to make Anderson surrender. He gets back at him epically by shelling him. Anderson's the guy defending Fort Sumter. Beauregard's going to bomb him using techniques he taught him. To which Anderson tweeted, he's like, I taught him well. The hashtag teachers matter. And then I surrender. And then I surrender. But support teachers. So yeah, like the first thing is that there's this great proving ground here where these people that will fight in the war, either together, both for the South, both for the North, or often opposite sides, fight together in Mexico. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo specifies this is the major consequence of the war. The forced Mexican cessation of the territories of Alta California and Nuevo Mexico. Nuevo Mexico does not just mean New Mexico, the state. Nuevo Mexico is New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, parts of Idaho, Wyoming. It's just like, this is what the sequel. Someone help me out. Let's go. This is blank the sequel.
Louisiana.
This is freaking Louisiana Purchase, the sequel, this time it's personal. Exactly. They have to cede all of California, okay? All of Alta California, High California, not Baja California. We're gonna keep Baja California so we can do the sand dune stuff. We want that shit, right? You guys can have Alta California and the gold. But it's Louisiana Purchase number 2, correct, perfect. Thank you, Dave Schmidt. Your answers are always on point. Surprise, surprise, you're right again.
Can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it was an open question. There was an open question. How much of Mexico should the United States get? Because the United States had just, it was a total American victory. There was no chance of any sort of effort, basically for Mexico to win the campaign. So I believe in Mexico City, the Americans are thinking, okay, well, how much do we want of Mexico? So then they end up choosing basically all the parts which are not really populated with very many Mexicans. For a few reasons. First off, because it's going to be easier to actually colonize those places if you don't have a lot of people there already. Second, in order to maintain, I guess, the lost character of America as people saw it so far, they did not want to add the United States of Mexico and have that be half the voting power of the United States eventually, because I think that's what it would have probably led to. It would have been a very interesting dynamic, but yeah, basically all of the Mexican territory was up for grabs. And I think there was even
Where does Pancho Villa come in?
Pancho Villa is closer to World War I.
Oh.
It's a great, excellent question. Pancho Villa also, this is an incredibly famous Mexican folk hero. Pancho Villa, John, Blackjack, Pershing, chasing him. That's a beautiful question in ways you don't even understand because it connects perfectly to this class. We talked about Pancho Villa last semester before the Americans entered the First World War. His raid on Columbus, New Mexico, and Pershing's subsequent chasing of him in Mexico and stuff. And so later on, Pancho Villa is still, he might not even be born at this time. I'm not sure when he's born, but he's a big guy, like an important guy in 1916. So imagine if he was 40 years old, then he's born somewhere in the 60s, probably not even born at this time, a little further on.
How does William Walker claim?
Who is William Walker?
Oh, you don't know? Who took over Nicaragua? White Southerner, slaveholder who took over Nicaragua?
No.
Okay, I don't actually know what years it was, but it was before the Civil War.
I kid you not, I'm not trying to be like false modest. Like there's a billion stuff I don't know. Like I really mean that. Like with all sincerity, I never get the people that are like, I remember I was in a class once when I was a student, and there's this guy, my friend, who's like a wise guy, for lack of a better word, putting it charitably. He's like a provocateur. He wanted to get the professor angry. And he was always asking questions like, "What about this thing here?" Like you can find stuff online, and the professor never could admit, like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, I'll check back on that." Like, yeah. I've never heard of William Walker.
You'll get a kick. You might hate him, you might love him, but you'll get a kick out of him.
William Walker.
Yeah, look him up. He ended up being executed. I think he invaded Honduras and Costa Rica, and there was like a 7-nation army of all the Central American countries. The U.S. wasn't supporting it.
So that 7-nation army, they did not like him.
Correct. I don't think the U.S. really liked him. There were probably some Southerners.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It was like his personal. I'll give you an interesting thing. There's a guy who declared himself the king of Patagonia. That's serious, not the clothing company. I mean, actually, like down in South America.
But William Walker actually succeeded in holding Nicaragua.
This guy did it. This guy was actually like, he was just delusional. So, okay, William Walker, that's my assignment. Okay, yes, look, let's move away from, again, I promised to move from Texas. We haven't quit Texas the whole time. Which is fine with me. It's big. Is it big? Are you correct or incorrect? You're correct.
It's big, so fair enough. For we pay the Mexicans $15 million, and we assume their debt. The Mexican citizens owe the U.S. government. So for an $18.25 million settlement, we get a purchase too. It's the best way to put it. All of Nuevo Mexico and Alta California, and supposed to be the Great California Gold Rush. Here's 4 big things, my friends. Right, so we have so much fun in this class, and I love all of you. Whole semesters, like all these kind of tangents like this, and all this fun nonsense. But what have we covered seriously so far? The Texas question really ends up in this thing. Kind of metastasizes into this, right? It goes from Empresario's 6-1 advantage to Santa Ana and the Alamo to Texas being independent. That being unacceptable. It's the Mexican-American War, 46-48. We're only 13 years away from the Civil War, being this great trading ground at this time when America will have these 4 results. Listen to them. Because of this victory, number 1, manifest destiny is kicked into high gear. Manifest destiny is that cliche, like God has destiny, providential destiny for America to expand from the original 13 colonies through the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, through the Midwest state, all the way to the famous Oregon Trail, all that kind of stuff. All right. If you ever wondered how did the contiguous U.S. become what it is, it's basically I would say 3 major events: American Revolution, Louisiana Purchase, Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo. There's 3 things that are very, very important. Okay, number 1, result of this, manifest destiny. Number 2, already talked about it, proving ground for the Civil War. I have here, really pause and explain. I already did. I don't have to. Number 3, sets off a crazy gold rush, okay, in California, but also, I said last class, in Colorado, the more compact Colorado gold rush of the 1850s. And number 4, ensures the USA becomes the dominant power in the Western Hemisphere. Guys, I can't overstate this. In 1823, Monroe puts forward his doctrine. The Western Hemisphere is closed to monarchies, it's only for democracy. Please don't get us big bad wolf here. We're scared of you guys. Please don't hurt us. To 1904, Roosevelt's corollary being we own the Western Hemisphere, right? We do whatever we want, whenever we want, with no apologies because we're Americans. And by the way, check out my Stars and Stripes tattoo. That kind of attitude, right? That kind of like even pre-World War I, it starts here. And also, if you're like, why does Jorge Ramos fight with Donald Trump on Noticias Telemundo? Because of this. This is the distrust of like the different, like the Mexican political elite and American political elite. A lot of its roots here. It's like, wow, you guys, it wasn't good enough for you to build a Six Flags theme park. You also steal Texas and in the false flag way, blah, blah, blah. A lot of those issues kind of are present. Besides all my joking, I'm being actually pretty serious. A lot of these geopolitical realities in the Western Hemisphere I covered this time. I'm going to jump ahead to number 4 because I want to finish with the Mormons. War manifest destiny question mark. I've kind of really talked about all manifest destiny you could probably want for now. If you were at a restaurant and I brought I'm like, would you like another plate of manifest destiny? Like, I've had questions. It was very tasty.
I'm not having it now.
You know what? I want more.
Me too.
Bring me some more. Okay.
Can I ask something?
Go ahead.
Before you leave this? And I'm not clear on this, and maybe you guys can jump in. But anyway, Texas, even though America gets Texas, et cetera, from Mexico, as you just described, Texas still maintains its own potential independence, does it not?
Is there a serious question?
Describe that.
Is there something in the Texas Constitution where Texas can advocate or like activate a clause or?
That was post Civil War though. That was
Yes,
after.
it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was after it was fully annexed into the clause that which I don't know how legitimate.
When was it annexed? When was it annexed?
Great question.
When was Texas annexed into the US? Immediately in 45, 46.
So before this.
Before the Mexican-American War
Right.
even starts. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the clause actually is if Texas, it's weird, if Texas gets enough signatures, they automatically secede and they have a monarchy and George Strait is named king.
That's already his name.
Yeah, exactly.
You
literal.
mentioned Six Flags. I read about the Lone Star State and the flag, and what I've read at least that points to this independent sort of spirit.
Yeah.
Well, it's meant, the Lone Star is meant to symbolize Texas independent spirit and also IQ level.
When I was home for break, You would be amazed by how many bumper stickers there are that say secede.
There was, and I'm not gonna comment because I might be too sympathetic to comment. Texas in 2012 had a petition like they wanted to see from the union. I was like, that's really cool. Like, I don't even care if it's good or bad, it should be interesting. It's like, I'm serious, I'm not gonna tell you how I feel about Trump, I swear I'm not. If any of you guys, there's like 20 people here, let me promote myself to all of you. I hope all of you come. Well, first of all, tonight we're having Spirit and Life. If you guys don't know what that is, if you don't know who our pastor is, Father Chase Hazardall, he is the man. He's the coolest dude on the face of the earth, literally. There's no like joke to come. I mean it sincerely. He's the man. He's the coolest guy. So actually come hear him speak. Andrew, the Focus missionary, is also an awesome guy. He introduces it. I give a small talk. Father talks. Tonight's topic is on councils. Okay. Next week, a week from now, I'm giving a talk called Label Catholics, where I'm going to say you should just be a Catholic. You can't be like a left-wing, right-wing Catholic. I'm going to talk a lot about Donald Trump and Joe Biden in that talk, and maybe say like not nice things about either of them. I'm not going to tell you how I feel about Trump. I'm simply going to say I loved when he was president because it was really fun to read the news. It's awesome. Like, even if it was true or not, like, you know, Trump, like you have the headlines like Trump asks, can we redirect the orbit of Mars to blow up Venus? You're like, it's believable. It's fake.
Greenland.
Yeah, can we buy Greenland? And then he trolled all the kind of New York Times reporters, like, I'm gonna put a hotel in Greenland. They're like, oh, you can't do that. Like, they freak out. It's awesome, right? So people, if Texas seceded, like, it'd just be awesome for like can you imagine reading the whining on like the Washington Post if Texas seceded? You know, like it'd be awesome.
Texas wants to annex the rest of the 48.
Texas, but the Texas legislature, the people who run Texas probably learn how to spell before they secede, you know? They should become literate, then worry about, you know, independent government. Probably a necessary component they don't have yet. Lots of gumption, but one thing at a time.
There's a lot of people in Eastern Oregon and Eastern
Yeah,
Washington.
I saw about this, yeah.
That would like to move into Idaho.
Serious question. Your 2 comments today, like just sheer genius, pure genius. Please keep them coming. Really, truly. Yes. There was a thing recently where Greater Idaho, exactly. And this is a serious thing. And everyone says like, look, they're not going to garner enough signatures or whatever. What do you guys think? Here's my open question to you. If this became a potential reality, some counties in Eastern Oregon, I don't know about Eastern Washington because it would be awkward if like within counties of seasons like Washington State University, Idaho. that might I don't know, right? Maybe Washington State would have to have a Vatican-like independent thing. It's part of Washington, Idaho. I don't know. But would you guys like to have a Greater Idaho or no? What are your thoughts?
Only going to include parts of Northern California would have direct access to port.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're thinking like military strategy. Like, what do we do when we fight Russia?
Well, I want to Greater Northern Idaho and get rid of this southern.
Why do you want to get rid of? Because Twin Falls.
Actually, like politically, it would make more sense if they became independent states in terms of like, you know, electoral college. So you would create 2 new red states like East.
Sure,
Washington,
got it, right?
Or,
Okay. Well, I mean, that's what like liberals want to do with making DC or Puerto Rico state. I mean, I think that could get like where it's like packing the Supreme Court, like we have 13 justices, 17, 21, 49. Like we create all these new states and it's like, it becomes like, you know, they have to make the stars this big on the flag, there's 501.
And I'm thinking about the resources.
So would you explain, what do you mean?
I mean, like, would there be enough resources to make it bigger?
So would you,
Better to stay small.
if I came to you, how would you decide? If I was like, I want you to be the governor of this new Greater Idaho, would you support it or not support it? What are your thoughts? Like, would you, like vis-a-vis the resource question, all that, do you think it's a good idea, bad idea? What's your kind of?
Well, as long as they all come up with resources.
Okay, fair enough.
Pull it.
And I guess that would be like, you know, see ya. Thank you guys. Hey, by the way, this is awesome. Like you guys can come, Sophia, I know you have class like 1 or whatever, like join anytime. Anyone on the stream too, like you could, you come and go as you please. True that. I'm so grateful to people that do that. Appreciate that so much. John, you the last semester would come by whenever you could, like 20 minutes, much appreciated, man. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
just quick constitutional law lesson. Article 4 of the US Constitution, states can be amended with consent of Congress, but if they are formed by splitting states up and doing that kind of thing, they need consent of the respective state legislatures. So you gotta get Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and Congress to all agree in order to form this new state of combined Greater Idaho or new whatever.
Which would be a very difficult task.
Which
right?
would be Herculean and yeah.
Well, that's the same.
One of the problems in doing that sort of thing is it's like all the people from California that want to get out of there and come to Boise and places like that, both with jobs and everything else. It's what kind of politics do they bring with them? I mean, they want out of California.
It's a fair point.
I think statistically that's incorrect, though. I think like the people who move here from California are more conservative because they're specifically leaving the blue state.
Because
the
they want
reverse
to,
is
because
true.
they want to be in a
Well, we
residence.
hope
Right.
that's true.
And the reverse is true too, like people from the middle of the country that move to California are more liberal than local California.
Some folks are moving to places like Sun Valley and then maybe they are.
Wait,
Sun
Sunday-
Valley, Blaine County, and is it the county, whatever that, is it what county is Driggs in? Those are the two county plus Latah County that vote Democrat.
They're blue consistently, yeah.
Yeah, I know in Texas, it's statistically true that the Californians and non-Texans who live there are more conservative than the Texans. I don't know the statistics right, but I would imagine that that's.
Sure.
Well, they think it is, they hope it is.
I assume that all the Californians moving to Latah County are just making it less blue.
Yes, I would think so. I believe so.
Sounds like a new Trojan horse to me.
Mhm.
I think
Sounds like they're
it's-
just waiting for everyone to get drunk and then we're going to burn the seat to the ground.
Maybe the Californians should have to wear like a little California patch.
So,
Like, I would think that.
go ahead.
Like me moving here, my husband said, oh, you're gonna change people, and I said, no, I'm gonna adapt.
Sure,
My dad always taught us that, we went to Mexico, we would adapt,
sure. And that's,
little whatever, poor people, whoever.
yeah, and that's a very, very fair point. I know there's a great point. The reading online, some guy was talking about, he was really fed up with just living in a city, just with all the kind of BS and like 5G facial recognition.
Yeah.
And he's like, I moved out to the country, to this place like this, like big sky country. And he's like, I'm becoming so much more conservative by osmosis, like you said, just by the people I'm around, you know, and all that. It's like, it's not even like a political thing, it's more of a cultural adaptation, like you so beautifully put it, right? I think that's a human thing.
Yes,
I think all of us, like, we have our strong views, but you do kind of want to ingratiate yourself.
yes, and that's why, you know, when people ask me, where are you from, I am going to say from San Francisco, California, but yes, I adapt.
Sure, right? Yeah, that's very, very fair.
California Republicans come to Idaho and realize that in Idaho they're Democrats.
Hmm.
Because.
Yeah, it's so liberal in California that you're like a right winger in California. A right winger in California is a leftist in Idaho. Yeah, there's that currency exchange, yeah, 1 to 300 currency.
And I don't know, because I like Trump. See?
And we'll see, but okay, that's exactly it, right? And again, like I promise you, I will never tell you guys support or don't support this guy or that guy. I really don't care. And I honestly, this is not being politically correct. I respect the diversity of the human experience, meaning like, I know a lot of people, and I probably include myself, where it's like, there's these 10 views and 5 are like liberal, 5 are conservative, people hold them seamlessly for themselves. They can't be put into one box, right? And stuff. So like, that's not surprising to me at all. I'm not surprised anymore when someone's like, I'm from LA and I was super liberal, but I voted for Trump. Or like some Wyoming ranchers like, yeah, I voted for Biden. I'm not surprised. Like people are weird, like in a good way. Like we're all like, we have weird mixes. And like, I know this one guy, John Bell Edwards, he's the governor of Louisiana. And he's like, I think pretty seriously pro-life. He's like a blue dog Democrat. And in his life, I think it was like his sister or something was born with Down syndrome. And his mom, thank God, what a beautiful testament to life, didn't abort this baby. It's his sister and he loves her. And so he's like fiercely, like psycho pro-life in a great way, but he's very, very liberal with everything else. Everyone has these stories that make them up that you can't see on the surface. Like that doesn't surprise me at all. I'm never surprised when some guy's like, oh, I fit this box, but I do this. I'm like, cool. Like actually the person's always like, wait, aren't you gonna like freak out or something? Like, sorry to disappoint you, you know, like, yeah, people are interesting. Okay, let's finish this class up, right? Let's get this finished. All these rabbit holes. I'm always on point. You guys are always taking us off. Settlement of the West Coast, Manifest Destiny. Because I want to finish with the Mormons. I want to finish with the most exciting material. Basically, I'm gonna jump ahead of the war now, but just all this stuff, right, from 1803 Louisiana Purchase through Louisiana Purchase 2, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, leads to eventually, with California and Colorado and those gold rushes too, 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad, where grandma, who has bad feet and doesn't want to take the covered wagon 6 months from New York to San Francisco, now can go in 6 hours, or 6 days, not 6 hours. Airline travel is not yet invented. 6 days by rail. In fact, in 1883, they have to make up time zones because now they're saying, oh, someone's traveling from Denver to Independence, Missouri, and they have to know, like, it's not just local time. And local time used to be hilarious. It was like, it's 12:26 in Denver, but in Boulder, it's 12:19. I'm dead serious. It's off like 5, 6 days. It's all based on some sundial. 1867, Alaska really kicks into high gear about like American expansion. Listen to these statements. 1876, Colorado, Nevada, 64, Nebraska, 67, Washington, Montana, 1889, Idaho's 1890. And this is why by the 1890s, thanks to what we talked about now, Guadalupe Hidalgo, Louisiana Purchase 1 and 2 makes America a contiguous nation to sea a nation. And what's in the middle of that is what we're going to spend the next 3 months talking about. Is, you know, the great, what people often focus on the Civil War, because everyone is so simplistic now. It's one thing is the Emancipation Proclamation, the end of slavery. Thank God for the end of slavery. That's very important. But that's not the only thing the Civil War does. Almost as important, just as big, as the Civil War cements the Roman ideal. Remember your 4 themes you asked about, the Rome versus Greece? The Civil War says from now on, we are going to be Romans. We are going to be, there's no more states' rights, there's no more localism, blah, blah, blah. And people going to the 1990s even and stuff, and people who are against the New World Order and all that are still fighting this post-war battle 130 years later. But like ever since Lincoln suspended habeas corpus in the war, the government tyranny and blah, 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 there's a lot of things that happened then that are still very, very present now. Really, they're still with us now. That's what's so cool about history, I think, is that those things, they never die. Those ideas are still around, and we'll talk about that throughout the course of this class. That's why all of you are here, not just for the great humor, but for these important things, right? The Mormons, last point of today's class. Joseph Smith, the guy from New York, claims to find golden tablets written in what he says is Reformed Egyptian in 1823, and he claims this is the lost church, right? Okay. And Joseph Smith, unsurprisingly, we talked about that first theme last class, the religious revivalism this time, second Great Awakening of 1805, that creates the Bible Belt, that burnt over district in New York, which means what? What does that mean? The burnt over district. What do we talk? What's burnt? Like forest fires? What do we mean? What kind of fire are we talking about? What am I saying?
It's their spirits, right?
Right. It's like exactly. It's like the religious. Think about literally it's prayer, camp meetings, like people, preachers, bawling, you know, their eyes out, screaming, thumping Bibles, literally, like just this kind of great religious revivalism that leads this like, enormous evangelical spirit, and it's very much Luther. Every man is a priest. Americanism. Like I can pick up my Bible and start my own church. People have said the Mormons are absolutely the most American Americans. Like it's the most American religion possible. It's like combine everything about America, like individual spirit and like the frontier and like every man can do it. I don't need popes and intermediaries and blah, blah, blah. And the frontier, like that's, Mormonism is all kind of that rolled into one.
I think we got.
Yeah, exactly, right? Mormon theology claims that you have your own planet and stuff, right? That's why plural marriage, which is disavowed, only the FLDS cling to the principle of plural marriage in practice, but I think even devout Mormons still believe they'll have their own planet and multiple wives in the afterlife, right? And I swear, I am a devout through and through Catholic. I believe Catholicism is the fullness of truth. I would never mock someone's beliefs. I in fact very much like the Mormons. I really mean that. I was invited to give a talk last April at the LDS Center, and like surprise, surprise, so nice, such nice people, good people. And I think Catholics, I actually said this in our talk. I started off and I said, let's not pretend we don't have theological differences. I did. So I hate that. Like, oh, we're actually very close. We're not. Our theology is completely different. But I said, like, in terms of our cultural values, like love of family, patriotism, communities, like the Mormons, good people, right?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Okay. So the Mormons, they feel like they're persecuted because of this principle, because of the principle of plural marriage. And they are like, we just want to practice our belief, right? A guy should have as many wives as he feels called to, or whatever, however we want to put it. So they keep moving to west. Where did Joseph Smith die? He dies in 1844, where? Missouri, I think Kirkland, Missouri. Anyone know Father Bill Taylor?
Yeah.
You know him? He was here at U of I.
He was here, so we have Father Chase.
Before Father
that
Vogel,
was
right?
Father Vogel, and before that was Father Vogel.
Father Bill Taylor married Caitlin actually, because Kate
Really?
was a student here. Father Bill, that's like her favorite priest of all time. Father Bill Taylor, he wrote a book. Wow, another book suggestion. He wrote a book called The Tale of Two Cities. Epic nod to Charles Dickens, first of all. Well played, Father Bill. A Tale of Two Cities, Catholicism and Mormonism. Father Bill Taylor grew up in a Mormon family, converted to Catholicism. He's a Catholic priest, so he's Catholic. But talk about a cool insider's perspective. This book is awesome. A Tale of Two Cities. I'm not just saying this, I like Father Bill. It's a 100-page book. It just compares kind of like Catholic and Mormon theology, if you're interested. Old book now, written in 1980, which I can't believe is almost, 42 years ago. It's insane. I mean, I was born in 1950, so I remember that he was really.
When were you guys married?
76.
Okay.
Yeah.
70s? No, you weren't.
I was going off in 1950, 2010.
10?
Yeah.
So I think technically, not to be disagreeable, I think his mother converted to Catholicism.
That's right. He writes about that. Yeah, and she was like
Right,
this.
and so he
flower.
was born
He was
and
born-
raised Catholic,
Thank
but
you.
in a very Mormon family.
That was a necessary corrective. He mentioned something about, he used like a very beautiful like term for his mom. It's a wildflower and like the Mormon feels like it's not, it could be very cheesy the way it sounds, it's actually very poetic. Exactly. He's a born Catholic, but it means he comes from like epic Mormon stock,
Yeah.
like old school stock. In fact, so much, I remember once walking, I swear this is true. You guys are like, why are you telling this story? It's totally irrelevant to us. Before we moved here, Kate and I were at the University of Illinois, we walked into Illinois. And we walked by this guy, this house, this realtor, his name was like Rick Taylor. And it was like Father Bill's clone in the face. And I was like, I wonder, Mormons have lots of kids. Before his mom moved, is this like the epic Mormon royalty of this like area? Like, what is that, like his long lost cousin? I remember thinking, like, I was convinced of it. I never followed up yet. I don't know yet. But it was like they literally, it was like identity theft. It was like he took Father Bill's photo and like photoshopped his cassock, it made him into like a street clothes. He was like, that's him. It's Rick
Excuse me,
Taylor.
walk up to him and say, are you not Mormon?
It was it was a poster.
Are
It was
you
a,
LDS? Oh,
yeah.
okay, it's just a poster.
it was a poster,
You're
yeah.
probably right.
I've talked to posters before after a long night partying, but it's not what I normally want to do. It wasn't a guy in flesh, it was just a photo of him, I think, with a number that I could have called.
Google stops it.
Could have Googled, could have called, decided, you know what, I don't want to, so I didn't.
It's my response to most.
It's your truth.
Your truth, my whatever floats your boat.
It's like, I don't wanna.
Yeah, I watched a really interesting conspiracy video the other day. I can't talk about it though. So I won't. Okay, we're almost done with the class. Guys, I'm taking too much time. Becca Schmidt is like, let's get this wrapped up. You're right, Becca, you're right. You're 100% right. George Joseph Smith dies in Missouri in 1844. Then our boy, BY, Brigham Young, he's like, I'm gonna take the Mormons west. Now, Joseph Smith, I read an awesome book on Brigham Young, titled, wait for it, Brigham Young, by John G. Turner. Turner is this guy, he's a professor like George Mason or some school in Washington. I recommend his biography. It's like 2012, fairly new. Turner's biography of Brigham Young basically says Joseph Smith was like this real believer guy. He was like into it, like he really believed, he believed it. He was a true believer. Or Brigham Young was like, I want to like be king of these people. And Brigham Young has not gotten his credit for being the greatest internal colonizer in US history. He basically said, and this is where Hunter's going to be right from before his point about being part of Mexico. Brigham Young basically says to his followers, it's 1844. We're persecuted wherever we go. These bigots in the American government don't understand that I should have as many wives as I do. I, Brigham Young, have 54 wives. That's reasonable. They don't understand.
Is that the actual number?
It was the actual number. He had 54 wives. I don't know if at first or later on, or it wasn't that much. It's not overdoing. Okay, it's not that much. I mean, yeah. So what? That he had 54 wives was more than. If he had wanted to have one wife per week, he wouldn't have. He couldn't do it in a whole year. It's not an excess. Don't judge. He's like, they're mad at us for having plural marriage. We get persecuted. Let's go as far away from America as we possibly can. So Brigham Young takes the Mormons, the LDS, out of Kirkland, Missouri, and they go to Salt Lake City. And then the Mexican-American War happens. Oops. Salt Lake City is part of Nuevo Mexico. And Brigham Young was like, what the, I mean, like, Mormons don't use profanity. You should have seen his Twitter feed. He was like, the personal direct messages he sent to his followers were like, they were really nasty things. But it was like the kind of profanity where some people who don't want to use profanity, instead of saying the F word, he was like, this is ducking, bull spit and stuff like that. Because all of a sudden, we thought we can go into this Mexican territory. Salt Lake City was part, first of all, there was no Salt Lake, they make Salt Lake City. Like the Mormons are awesome when it comes to building stuff. If I want someone to build me like a shed with exact specifications, like give me the nearest LDS people immediately, right? It'll be built in like nine hours, and then we'll have like a potluck together and drink like orange juice and watch BYU football. It'll be awesome. They build Salt Lake City out of nothing. These were epic builders, like Roman level engineers. And they think like the Mexicans are in Mexico City. That's 6 trillion miles away. They're not going to come and get us. And he's right. They're not going to come up here and police this. We can do whatever we want out here. Now all of a sudden, the freaking Americans that we hate from Washington, right? They're like going to get on our tail, and they do. And as Hunter said, when Brigham Young tries to propose the state of Deseret, which is like, hey, Americans, and you guys know the context now. You know all that land you got in Nuevo Mexico, part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, that's going to be a Mormon theocracy now, where polygamy is the law of land. And again, you can feel, I'll let you tell me how the American government reacted. We just fought a war against the Mexicans, got all this land. We wanted to manifest destiny. These guys wanted theocracy. It went very well from that point. You have something called, in the 1850s, called the Mormon War. Robert E. Lee is also involved in that. The Mountain Meadows Massacre, a lot of things I wish we had more time to talk about. For lack of a better word, Brigham Young is inaugurated as the first governor of the Utah Territory on April 4th, 1851. So they tell him like, look, just shut up, stop tweeting, and stop with the Deseret stuff, and you can be governor of Utah. And he's like, this is a good deal. He's like, I was a guy, I think from Vermont, who bumped into this Joseph Smith guy. I think Brigham might have been like a Methodist Congregationalist, something. And he's like, now I'm like king of Utah, basically. And the Mormon church, as far as I know, does not disavow polygamy until 1890. So he's still like, whatever. And also, Brigham Young, this is where like, this guy's the man. He installs spittoons in like the temples. And like Mormons who now, according to, I think, D&C Code 91, they don't drink or use tobacco. Mormon was like, he had a lip in 24/7. Lit, like big thing of like Kodiak right here all day long. And that's how he passed the laws. Whatever he liked, he would like take this like big stick, and if they're like, motion to do X, he'd be like, and if he didn't like it, he'd just spit tobacco. They don't have to even talk. And then his stenographer like wrote the stuff down. It was all good. Okay, so we're done. The class is over. When we pick up
I think we were done in a couple
I
minutes.
think we were done. I think we've been done for a while. What we have next class is lecture 3 entitled Immediate Precursor to War, 1848 to 1860, up to John Brown. John Brown is actually 1859. But we're really going to get after the kind of like super Civil War type stuff. I like order. I know it doesn't seem like I do. But after going a bunch of like freestyle stuff, I want to like make everything very just boom, 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 German status, German engineering. Like how many Germans does it take to screw in a light bulb? One. They are a highly efficient and humorless people. So let's be German right now. Just the facts. We had 4 themes we started the class with, right? We're not going to go over them again in elaboration. Just remember, religion, commerce, Greco-Roman philosophy, liberal republicanism. We start manifest destiny with 1803, Louisiana Purchase, post-Thomas Jefferson coming to presidency 3 years earlier. Louisiana Purchase 2, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in the wake of the whole Texas question plus Mexican-American War, which beyond the war leads to all these manifest destiny questions. And our Mormon friends are at the heart of the story as these great internal colonizers, but who themselves are also defeated. If you think about the US government overcoming obstacles, foreign, domestic, whatever it is, that's stitching up this contiguous US, I guess you can see why a lot of people in the North, Lincoln et al., aren't too happy about, now it's the redneck guys in the South, the guys who do noodling. Anyone know what noodling is?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Explain noodling.
find a crevice in a riverbed and you stick your arm in it and try to pull out a massive catfish.
Yeah, you try to stick your stick your hand in muddy water into the mouth of a catfish, have it bite you and pull a catfish. These people thought they could have a government, you know? And you think like, I understand why the North is like, you know, we've defeated the British, we have all this stuff going on, all this squabbles with what used to be the Spanish Empire, now Mexico, the Mormons, everybody now, the Southerners, right? So when we get to the Civil War finally, it's gonna be really crazy bonkers, high tension. It's not gonna be surprising when things kind of spill over. Next class, that 12-year period, we'll talk about the Wilmot Proviso, the Compromise of 1850, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the whole bleeding Kansas, all that, Dred Scott, John Brown. A lot of kind of the real like straw on the camel's back, last points before we get to the war. Okay, we have finished 9 minutes early. That's okay, it's not great. I like to be like done 21 minutes early usually. Anyone have any final points? Anyone have any final comments, anything whatsoever? Yeah.
One quick one, I've been told that actually nowadays in Salt Lake City, there's more Catholics in Salt Lake City than Mormons, and the Mormons around the country.
That's absolutely correct. I'm a huge fan of Napoleon Dynamite, which is enormously Mormon movie. Everyone's LDS, like the camera's LDS in the movie. And they are like Preston area, southern Idaho, Pocatello area. Like, when is Pocatello just gonna rename their city like Beehive? You know, like the state of Deseret, by the way, is from the Beehive from the Book of Mormon. Yeah, but that southern Idaho area is like 97% Mormon. Whereas you're right, Salt Lake City, which has become insanely cosmopolitan. It's funny actually, and you're right, period. In the great, they have a book, they have a game, the BYU Cougars against the Utah Utes in football called the Holy War. And the BYU guys, who I think are still, they're fairly devout Mormon, they love to twist it to how like pagan Utah's become. And they interviewed a guy after one of the games when BYU defeated Utah. And they asked the guy, like, you know, you guys beat the Utah Utes, it's kind of an upset victory. What do you think contributed to your victory? Was it the offensive plan, some lucky breaks? They're like, you know, I think it really comes down to really staying on the straight and narrow. When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, being pleasing to heaven, like the guy goes full like Mormon, like these guys are pagans, they're heretics. So like Salt Lake City is seen as like Babylon to some Mormons. Yeah, it's interesting, like, right? It was like, it used to be so like the paradise. I think a lot of it's amazing. It's amazing what we said earlier about all the kind of like diverse. I'm from LA, but I'm super conservative. I'm from Iowa, but I'm liberal. Like that people in Salt Lake, which you think is like the Mormon capital of the world, are looked at as like heathen pagans by like Mormons, like the country dairy folk in southern Idaho.
Can Mormons eat chocolate?
I think so. Chocolate has some caffeine, right?
It has
But,
caffeine in it. Can they eat chocolate?
Yeah, they can drink caffeine.
They can't have caffeine, they can't have coffee, they can't have
something,
Coca-Cola.
no, something changed. You're right. I've always heard they can't, but something changed on BYU. They were selling Coca-Cola products.
Because their church owns
Maybe they have.
Because they own Coca-Cola.
Yeah, they do.
There is no coincidence.
And
Another revelation.
also there's coincidentally, after they banned coffee, they started drinking a tea that was made from the plant that the first amphetamines were used. For real. It was called Mormon tea.
I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that at all.
So
Used to be no hot drinks.
I took the girls to
Yeah,
mass
hot change.
in Brigham City this summer. And the Catholic church was the tiniest little thing, and the temple, I mean, it wasn't the biggest temple, but you know.
So can we eat chocolate? I have to give someone who's Mormon.
But was it nice mass, everything?
Yeah.
Like good experience?
This
It
is
was a
not
good
a
experience.
theoretical
Well, now you
Like,
can convert.
"Oh, come back, come back."
What?
You're right, that's a good one.
All right, well, the Astons, everyone else on the Zoom, thank you so much for joining us. I will see you all next Monday. Take care.
The most impressive thing to me is like Brigham